We're live. We hit the camera. Just gotta slide this out, guys, a little bit. That looks pretty good. How is everybody? Let me fix the lighting a little bit. Let me fix that a little bit. Should be a little better. There we go. That's a little better. We're here. Okay. Podcast number 5. I'm doing another solo podcast today, and we're here, ready to fucking bang it out. I actually have another topic lined up as I usually do on my solo podcast. And I thought today we would get into Marvel Comics. We're going to talk about some of the eras of Marvel, and we're going to talk about how it relates to the modern era today, and a lot of different things in history that actually made some of the heroes who they were because of the events in history going on. So, the House of Ideas. Before Marvel was a billion-dollar film empire, before superheroes dominated every movie theater and streaming service, Marvel was just ink on pulp paper, 10-cent comics sold to kids on the street corners. It started as a scrappy publisher in 1939 called Timely Comics. No one could have predicted it would grow into the House of Ideas, creating characters that are not only define an industry, but mirrored the struggles and dreams of generations. Marvel's story is about more than capes and powers. It's about propaganda in wartime counterculture in the 60s, gritty anti-heroes in the 70s and 90s, bankruptcy, rebirth, and eventually global dominance. And through it all, Marvel heroes weren't gods above us. They were people like us, flawed, messy, and relatable. Tonight we'll walk through Marvel's eras: the golden era, the silver, the bronze, the modern, and cinematic, and the present crossroads era to see how comics became modern mythology. So, it's like a little brief intro. Before we get in here, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share this with your friends. Trying to get more people on here, but I need to have people interacting for people to want to come on, unfortunately, and we're getting good traction slowly but surely. So let's just keep it going. If everybody shares with one person and people see this, everybody will eventually share with groups of people. If I share with one person and he shares with one person and he shares with one person and Loki shares with one person, then we're all gonna get it around eventually. My boy, you wanted to be on the podcast? Yeah. Okay, you can sit. We're gonna get into the golden age. So 1939 and 1950s, birth of heroes and wartime propaganda. The golden age was truly the beginning of Marvel, though at the time it wasn't even called Marvel yet. In 1939, pulp magazine publisher Martin Goodman saw the rise of comic books and wanted in on the craze. He created Timely Publications, the company that would one day evolve into Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics number 1, 1939, the beginning. The debut introduced the Human Torch, not Johnny Storm, but an android who burst into flame when exposed to air. Shunned as a monster, he was Marvel's first tragic hero, and Namor the Submariner, a violent Atlantean anti-hero, arrogant and quick-tempered, often at war with humanity for polluting the oceans. The book was a hit, selling out and demanding a reprint. Timely proved superheroes were the future. Captain America and the War Effort. This was in 1941. So Joe Simon and Jack Kirby's Captain America became Timely's flagship. Debuted before the U.S. entered into World War II with Cap punching Hitler on the cover. Cap was a patriotic propaganda in costume, inspiring kids and soldiers alike. He sold nearly 1 million copies per issue during the war. So it was like a big propaganda piece. And because of the fact that they had the war going on, they made this hero, Captain America, and it actually like helped their industry astronomically. It changed a lot of their market sales. It was huge for them. Um, Other timely heroes, dude, you got to take a hike. Other timely heroes that we have, um, the Destroyer, Nazi smashing hero, popular in Europe. I've never even heard of him. The Wizard, a super speedster, often mocked now, but proof of Timely's experimentation. And Miss America and Blonde Phantom, early heroines during a male-dominated market. So they were like some, I guess, of the first female heroes that they introduced. Comics as propaganda, sold in the millions, shipped overseas to soldiers, read by kids at home. Villains weren't aliens or gods, they were Nazis, spies, and saboteurs. Comics became part of U.S. propaganda machine alongside posters and films. In the post-war decline, when World War II ended, so did the demand for flag-waving superheroes. By 1946 and 47, sales dropped and genres shifted to crime, romance, horror, and westerns. Timely rebranded as Atlas Comics. Captain America limped into the 1950s briefly, revived as Commie Smasher, but it flopped. Superheroes nearly vanished from Marvel's lineup until the 1960s. Marvel's golden age heroes weren't fighting aliens, they were punching Nazis and winning the war on paper. They were propaganda wrapped in capes, and for a moment, they were unstoppable. So that's the end of the golden era. We're now in like the silver age. This is from 1961 to the 1970s. And it's called the Marvel Revolution, actually. People talk about the Silver Age as the revolution of Marvel. It kind of came back. Um, in the early 60s, DC Comics revived superheroes with the Justice League. Marvel, under Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko, didn't just copy, they redefined the genre. What made Marvel different? Heroes had real problems: bills, jobs, heartbreak, and anger. They lived in New York City, not a fictional metropolis or Gotham City. And they weren't gods, they were flawed humans who happened to have powers, whether they obtained them from some type of freak experiment or they were born with them. Um, and then, so in 1961, you get the Fantastic Four. This is Marvel's first family. They didn't have any masks and they had no secret identities. They were like a face of the public in a sense. They fought cosmic villains like Doctor Doom, Galactus, and they had a balance of family arguments and like a family dynamic of like taking care of each other and looking out for each other. It was like one of the first families. It was the first for Marvel, but the Bat family, I guess you could look at, they have like a family dynamic as well in DC Comics. It was Marvel's first example of like a family dynamic team. Um, and then Ben Grimm's The Thing became Marvel's first truly tragic hero, actually. A lot of people think that the Incredible Hulk was like the first tragedy. He was actually the second. What happened to The Thing was the first like an experiment gone wrong situation. Um, and then in 1962, you actually get the Incredible Hulk. Bruce Banner, the Cold War scientist who turns into the Hulk, the big green muscle machine monster, full of rage and just a menace, dude. Um, he's an allegory for nuclear fears and the monster within. There was a lot of fears about after dropping the bomb in World War II and nuclear tests and stuff like that for not factories, but they were trying to experiment more with nuclear fission and stuff like that. And a lot of people had a lot of fears about it. Um, and he was hated and feared more than loved by the people in the comics, not us reading, but in his world, he was hated and feared. Nobody wanted Bruce around, or the Hulk. And in 1962, we also got the Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker, who is a broke, bullied, grieving, but responsible young man. So he has a lot of baggage that comes with him. He's not just this invincible character. He's the first teenage hero who wasn't a sidekick. And he is defined by the line, with great power comes great responsibility. A lot of us have always heard that watching the movies. Uncle Ben's famous line to Spider-Man. It's a relatable, flawed, and lonely character. It's Marvel's breakout star. They got a lot of traction with the Amazing Spider-Man stuff due to the fact that he was like the first kid hero in a sense. And then in 1963, we actually get a couple people, but I want to skip over that because we have one more from 1962. I don't know why I labeled it like that. So we have Thor, that comes in 1962. Norse mythology blended with Marvel storytelling, and it also introduced Loki, Marvel's first major trickster villain, somebody who wasn't just like a brute force wanting to conquer the world. He actually was like mischievous and like cunning, and it added a different blend for the villains in Marvel. So in 1963, we have the X-Men who come out, mutants born different. They're hated and feared by the humans at the time, obviously. And it has a lot of similarities, people at the time thought, to the civil rights movement, outsiders fighting for acceptance. Professor X versus Magneto mirrored MLK versus Malcolm X, is a lot of people used to talk about that. The fact that Magneto is this like powerhouse, wants to do things by force, and Professor X wanted the debate in a sense. A lot of people think that was a mirror of what was going on in history at the time, which I thought was interesting. I learned this at a young age. Not a lot of people do know that. Um, and it's not like 100% confirmed, but it makes sense for the time period. And I always thought that was interesting. Professor X, uh, being MLK. It's just fascinating. So Iron Man, 1963, Tony Stark, a wealthy arms dealer and an armored redemption. A Cold War creation reflecting the military industrial complex. So a lot of people looked at him as like the fact that we were getting more technically advanced, and like the scariness that came from it, like missiles and all this different crap you see in a lot of those Iron Man comics early. And then Doctor Strange, 1963 as well, a surgeon turned sorcerer. It had a lot of different psychedelic art in the comics, mystical philosophy, which was pretty different, except for like the Thor stuff, because you had the Norse stuff coming along. And then it had counterculture appeal, believe it or not. DC gave us gods to worship, but Marvel gave us people who had to be superheroes, people that we could relate to. Then we get to the Bronze Age of Marvel, which is from the 1970s to the 1980s. And this is growing up with society. So the world changed. Vietnam, civil rights, feminism, corruption, and Marvel adapted. Spider-Man breaks the code in 1971. Harry Osborn's drug addiction arc ran without comics code approval, and it proved comics could take and tackle social issues. So his friend Harry Osborn, who is the Green Goblin, which you find out later, gets hooked on drugs, and it doesn't tell you, it's some type of like a pill or something, but it doesn't really go into detail on it. But he's hooked on drugs, and it really was something that Spider-Man had to tackle. And the comics. It was one of the first time comics really brought something kind of dark like that into the comics, which was pretty fascinating. Um, and then we have Black Panther and Luke Cage. So Black Panther has the Panther's Rage, which tackled colonialism and the African identity. Um, and then Luke Cage, 1972, was the first black hero with his own book, A Street Level Hero for Hire. Wolverine and X-Men Rebirth, the giant-size X-Men #1 with Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Wolverine join. Chris Claremont's X-Men explore prejudice, identity, and belonging because obviously, like we discussed in the Silver Age, they were kind of outcasts, pushed to the side. Society didn't want them, and yet they still had to keep choosing to be heroes and fight for society when darkness came upon the Marvel Universe, you know? And you also get the Dark Phoenix saga in 1980s, which became Marvel's tragic masterpiece. The Punisher in 1974 with Frank Castle, a Vietnam vet turned lethal vigilante. He embodied the 1970s fear of crime and urban decay, along with a lot of PTSD type stuff and like a lot of that whole era of time. And then Cosmic Marvel expands. So Jim Starlin, Cosmic Epics with Thanos, Adam Warlock, and the Infinity Stones. And it has a philosophical space opera. So he started kind of going into space. They talk about like Thanos and the Infinity Stones and how the universe was made, and like Lady Death, which is like when you die, you go to Lady Death, the Grim Reaper in Marvel, essentially. And there's the Watchers who pay attention and can never intervene, but they record all of history. And they get into like a lot of that at that point. Um, the Bronze Age was when Marvel grew up tackling addiction, racism, war, and identity while still saving the universe. And then we get into the modern age, which is 1980s to the 1990s. There's a darkness and edginess. Marvel embraced grit, anti-heroes, and moral ambiguity. Wolverine had his solo series exploring his feral past and samurai honor. The Punisher explodes in popularity. He's the judge, the juror, and the executioner. A lot of people really got into that because it was just fascinating to see somebody taking the role of like a hitman, but also interrogating you and trying to figure out why you did it and make you think about it, but then still killing you at that. It was a weird idea for anti-hero. And then you get Venom in 1988. Spider-Man's monstrous reflection, born with the black suit. You get Deadpool in 1991. He's the first fourth wall breaking mercenary, ultra violent and hilarious. A lot of people really liked him for his strange comedic and mentally unstable persona. And then you get the X-Men. They dominate in sales. Dark Phoenix Saga and Days of Future Past cement in legacy actually up till today in the cinematic, where they actually had to make Days of Future Past a movie. It was one of their best comics at the time. I mean, top seller. But every good story, they're taken off. There, you could say Marvel was actually becoming the hero in the comic book industry along with DC. But every good hero has a downfall. Speculation bubble, flashy covers, gimmicks, and oversaturation led to Marvel filing bankruptcy in 1996. To survive, Marvel sold film rights. They sold Spider-Man to Sony, X-Men and the Fantastic Four to Fox, and the Hulk to Universal. The 90s gave us some of Marvel's darkest icons and nearly destroyed the company entirely. Selling those rights actually was the only thing that really kept them alive, and it was some of, like, the most popular ones that they had. Spider-Man, the X-Men, and Fantastic Four comes with not only one hero, but multiple because 'cause they're teams, and The Incredible Hulk was a huge, huge hit at the time. So that was a big hit for, Marvel. And now we're into the cinematic era, or the cinematic age. From the 2000s to 2010s, Marvel on screen. Hollywood had a huge part in saving Marvel. The early hits was X-Men 2000 with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, became iconic. Spider-Man in 2002 with Tobey Maguire captured hearts. Oh my god, that was awesome as fuck. We captured hearts. It captured hearts. The MCU is born. Iron Man in 2008. Robert Downey Jr. Revitalizes Tony Stark. The post-credit Nick Fury's Avengers Initiative. And then the expansion of that, we have Thor in 2011 with the mythology entering Asgard and like some of the outer worlds and stuff. You have Captain America in 2011 with a moral compass in the modern world. He's kind of like the goody two-shoes hero in a sense. He fights for what is right, not because somebody tells him to. And he is like the American hero, I would say. In 2012, you get the Avengers. The impossible crossover becomes a reality. In 2014, we got Guardians of the Galaxy, which proved that weird space people and all that could work for the industry. And then you get Black Panther in 2018. Afrofuturism. I didn't write that one. Afrofuturism. I don't even know what that means. Representation and global event. Culmination with Avengers Endgame in 2019, the biggest superhero movie of all time, a cultural milestone. From bankruptcy in the 90s to global dominance, Marvel reshaped not just comics, but cinema itself. So now we're at the crossroads era, 2020s, the present where Marvel stands today. Post Endgame, Marvel faces its toughest challenge, sustaining momentum. It has the Disney Plus expansion, which they had a lot of different shows come out. The WandaVision series, Grief in a sitcom kind of form. It didn't really catch with a lot of people. Loki, the timelines, and the free will of Kang. I actually liked Loki. That was probably the only one that I thoroughly enjoyed besides the Moon Knight one. And Daredevil. I like those, but they're not on Disney Plus. Those were our Moon Knight is, but Daredevil is on Netflix. And then you get Miss Marvel. I wasn't really a fan of that. Optimism, Gen Z voice, cultural representation. Expanded storytelling, but risked content fatigue. The Multiverse Saga with Doctor Strange 2 and 2022. What's going on, yo? How we doing? We got Doctor Strange 2 in 2022. It was an alternate Illuminati horror tone, kind of like a secret society. Hell yeah, bro, we made it. We got Quantumania in 2023, the Ant-Man movie. Kang revealed as the next new big bad villain that we were going to face, which kind of flopped on its head. We'll get to that in a second. And then you also got the Cosmic Ambition, but some fans say Marvel lost the intimate heart with all of these shows. It was too, I don't know, they just didn't have the format in a sense. The only one I like thoroughly enjoyed was the Daredevil, the Moon Knight one, and I really liked the Loki one, but the other ones on Disney Plus just kind of weren't it. And then they came out with the Eternals, which a lot of people are going to chew me out on this one, but I wasn't really a big fan of that either. That was in 2021. The millennia spanning gods among humans, ambitious but diverse, and they also introduce like the Celestials, which live inside the planets and stuff like that. Which, don't get me wrong, I like the concept from the comics, but I just didn't really like how the movie went. Um, and then, so we have Doomsday now, and Secret Wars is supposed to be coming out around 2027. So they went from Kang the Conqueror starting to be like the big bad guy to switching off and kind of scratching the Disney Plus Marvel shows, I guess. And now they're doing just the movies again, which I kind of think is the right idea. They did. I I just feel like they should keep it as movies. Do the Star Wars shows. I like those. I think they've been doing pretty cool ideas with that, but that is for another episode. Um, so where was I? Based on the comics, where the universe collapses into one, it could. So people are theorizing, and it's been confirmed supposedly that the X-Men, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, they're all going to be in the same movie, which means they're going to end the universe. They think Doctor Doom is going to kill everybody and start a new universe somehow with his cosmic power. And that is going to explain how all of those heroes that were never in the same universe for all the movies for the past few years are going to now be in the same universe, because the multiple universes and the timelines get destroyed, and there's one, and it's Doom's timeline. He chooses what goes on there. So it's going to be interesting. Um, they're going to merge Fox's X-Men, Sony's Spider-Man, I didn't mention that, and the MCU, which is the Avengers and everything. And it's going to be another Endgame moment because they're going to have two movies. So it's going to be Doomsday and then Secret Wars. It's going to be two movies tied together again. Um, New heroes for the generation. We had Shang-Chi, which was like the martial arts and family trauma dynamic. He was fighting for the Nine Rings, I think it was, which is kind of like a cosmic weapon. And then we had Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. She was kind of like a cultural representation for like the youth, the Gen Z. I wasn't really a fan of the show, but I could see how it would appeal to people of that age bracket, kind of growing up in high school nowadays. And then we had Miles Morales, Into the Spider-Verse. It was kind of like a comic-y art style. I actually liked that. I thought that was pretty good. And explain the timelines a little bit better. The fact that you could have multiple heroes that are all Spider-Man, and the different universes, the multiverse ideas. And then you had, like I said earlier, Moon Knight. She-Hulk was garbage. Echo, I didn't see that one. Yeah, yeah. I do too. I like when they have the comics actually like relate to, what do you call it? The comics relate to the movie, or the movie relates to the comics. They don't just like go off on a tangent and do something completely different. Like, I feel like they screwed up Moon Knight in that regard. There was some things that I felt like they did wrong with it, but there were some things that they did right with it too. Sorry, I have an itch in my eye. um, but yeah, I feel like they shouldn't stray too far from the comics. That's when they start botching the freaking the, the what do you call it? The script, I guess, the story arc. It gets too much. Um, so there were some films that underperformed. The Marvels is one that was talked about highly underperforming, I guess. Um, and there's a lot of talk of superhero fatigue, and that Marvel must return to the character-driven stories that built its empire. You know what I mean? So having Iron Man 1 through 3, and like all those people tying in to like eventually have like a big team or like a big threat, and they all have to come together. Everybody likes that idea of how they play out over movies. And like, yes, it sucks because you have to then go and see, like, let's say I see Thor and Hulk and Iron Man, but I don't see Captain America and the Black Widow movie, but Avengers is about to come out. I have to see those two movies to know what's going on in Avengers. So you have to kind of, it forces you to keep spending money to go to the movies, which stinks, but I like it because then you have like an actual story you're following. Um, yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that what they did with the Miles Morales, and to be honest, they actually have like it wasn't 100% the comics, but they have like talks of the multiverse because of the fact that Miles meets Peter Parker. And so Miles ends up having like he goes through a portal at some point and ends up in what he thinks is New York. And he goes home to realize Peter Parker lives there and he's a red Spider-Man, but he's the black Spider-Man. So it's like all confusing and they talk. But it was different in the movies, but it was different to keep like you entertained. You didn't want to know exactly what was going to happen, but have a general idea. Don't stray too far. I totally agree with that. And then, so I know you weren't here, but for everybody in the comments who does end up watching this later, because this is going to be on the channel, you can watch it later at a later date. What era was like the most enticing to you that we talked about? Because we're kind of like at the end. We had the golden era, the silver era, the bronze, the modern, and then the MCU or the cinematic era. Um, I personally think that there's a lot in the silver era that happened that I could have honestly went more in depth on. I think that we could honestly do a whole podcast on just the silver era. That was the era that Spider-Man came out, Captain America, and like they were dealing with World War II propaganda. It's just fascinating to see like the fact that we had a war going on really promoted a comic book company and like made it what it was. Like it's so fascinating to me. It really is interesting, like to weave it into history like that. Is smart on Stan Lee's part. He did a that's a smart way to do it because then everybody's like Captain America, the first one, is him punching Adolf Hitler in the face on the cover of the freaking thing. So it's like it's just fascinating that like, and it makes sense, I guess. Like it took off, you know. Um, so drop it a comment on what you think your favorite era was. Um, and then do you connect with any of the heroes that I mentioned or even a different one and like describe why you feel like you connect with that hero? Me personally, I feel like a Spider-Man. I'm like kind of smart, but I'm also like a dumb kid still. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. And you know that great power does come with great responsibility, bro. So fucking fucking um and then is Marvel shaping culture or just reflecting it? Personally, I think they are doing a little of both. I think that I don't know. I don't know. I think they're definitely shaping culture a little bit. They maybe not shaping 100%, but they're reflecting which those reflections are also shaping culture, I would say. Um the golden era, okay. Yeah, 2020 2044. Talking about like the Spider-Man 2044. Okay. It's like the futuristic Spider-Man, if I remember correctly. Superman Prime. Okay. The Phoenix Saga was huge. Yeah, that was big. I never actually got to read it, but I've like listened to like lore on it on YouTube. I love listening to lore. And that's pretty wild. You're a DC guy. Always wanted to be Nightcrawler or Wolverine. Okay, those are solid picks. Nightcrawler's cool. I've always kind of messed with him. Um, does art reflect life or yeah, I that is a good point. I would agree with that. Yeah. Because it really is an art form. It's telling a story. Um So you could really take it into a more broad scale if you want to break it down like that for sure. Um, I mean, it really depends. Like, I feel like it's a cycle. They shape each other in a sense. They reflect and shape each other at the same time. It's a balance. And then yeah, that was Marvel's history. Marvel's history is American history, from World War II propaganda to the 60s counterculture, from gritty 70s anti-heroes and the Vietnam era, to the 90s collapse, and finally the Hollywood empire. It gave us a flawed it gave us flawed heroes who fought. Jesus Christ, let me start over on that. Oh my god, that was bad. It gave us flawed heroes who fought not just villains, but their own demons. It turned comics into modern mythology. And as Stanley always said, what the fuck does that word mean? Excelsory. I don't know what that means, but I guess Stanley always said it. Jesus. Oh, man. I botched that. I should have did a better closing. I used ChatGPT on that close, and I'm not going to lie. I should have read through that one a little better. Yeah, so here we go. This is the part I remember editing. Stan Lee, I have with great power comes great responsibility. That's one of his quotes. And then Jack Kirby, comics are a reflection of the world around us, kind of like what we were just talking about. It's a reflection of the world around us. And I would also say it helps shape different areas by promoting what's going on around in a sense and having people read about it. Um, yeah. All right. That is everything I had on that. I'm gonna look up that word. It's a Latin word. Oh. It's a Latin word meaning ever upward. Most famously used as the state motto for the New York and a catchphrase for comic book writer Stan Lee. There we go. It is a Latin word meaning ever upward. Excelsior. What? Oh, Excelsior. That's how you say it. Excelsior. Excelsior. I've never heard of that word, but that is a new one for me. Means ever upward. Okay. Well, I learned something new today, and hopefully you guys learned something new about Marvel with me. I know you yeah, bro, ever upward. Hopefully somebody learns something. Whether it's in a month from now, 2 years from now, somebody just strolls past and learns something. I learned that today. So thank you for watching. I appreciate everybody who's gonna tap in, share with your friends, like the video, and let's get fucking cooking in the kitchen, dude. I'm hungry. Peace, guys. Yes, end the stream.